Good morning, everyone. I'm Sarah Colvin here at MEA headquarters with Amy Croteau, Natural Resource Officer, and we have a whole group of critters behind us that you are going to tell us about. This is a really exciting project that you've been working on. So tell me a little bit about these animals.
Okay, so as a natural resource officer, my coworkers and I are often called out to injured animal situations. We go out and investigate them, and oftentimes those animals are then brought to Cod Wildlife. What I've noticed over the 5 years that I've been full-time as an officer is that the majority of the animals that I bring to Cod Wildlife are going to be put down. It's sort of a sad thing that you come to deal with over the years, but I thought, it's a shame to have these beautiful animals eventually just put into a freezer and then cremated. Well, some of them, like your coyotes and fox, will be sent off for rabies testing. Because they are rabies vector species. A lot of them are just simply incinerated. So I thought there was a good opportunity there for my department to apply for federal and state salvage permits, be able to legally harvest these animals when they die, and have them stuffed so we can use them as educational tools in classrooms, visits to libraries, wildlife expos, that sort of thing, and kind of give them a second shot at life.
Exactly, and it's interesting that you can't obviously, it makes sense that you can't just say, okay, this is a great specimen, I want to take it, get it stuffed, and then use it. There's a process and there's permits that are in place.
And a lot of people don't know that, and so, I have a friend who lives right on Lake Wequawket, and their family has an osprey up above their mantle, which they have absolutely no permits for. It's completely illegal, but it happens a lot when people go hunting or they come into contact with animals. They think like, oh, you can just harvest this. But because I work for a municipality and because I'm an officer, we try very hard to follow the laws as best we can.
Exactly, and so again, you said you kind of got the idea for this as you saw animals going to the Cod Wildlife Center, being incinerated, being put down, and as you say, a chance to give them a second life. So for how long have you been working on this? And tell me a little bit about the process for getting those permits.
The process, it was a process. I started back in December of 2012, and I applied for my state salvage permit, which allows me to harvest mammals. And then I realized that I was sort of missing birds from this equation, and then found out through an error of my own that you can't just harvest hawks on a state salvage permit. You actually need a federal migratory bird permit. So I applied for that, and while I get a new state salvage permit every year, the federal permits are good for 3 years, but I'm required to do at least 12 visits with the hawks every year in order to keep that permit. So there are stipulations that go along with that permit in order for us to be able to keep them.
Great. So for how long have you been building this collection that we see behind us today?
It takes a really long time. Once we get the animals, I have one taxidermist who does my birds for me, and he's in North Andover. And then my guy who does my mammals, the guy who does my birds is in Newburyport. And the guy who does my mammals is in North Andover. And when they get the animals, I bring them to them frozen. They have to gut the animals, skin the animals, and then send the animals off to have their skins tanned. They also have to order forms for the bodies, which then they wrap the bodies around when they get them back from the tannery. And then they have to have their positions approved. They have to find bases for them. These rocks are actually made by the taxidermist, so they're easier for us to carry. Otherwise, they'd be extremely heavy. And so it takes between 8 months and a year to get the animals. So even though I harvested these animals back in the beginning of 2013, I just recently got them back in July.
Great. And so you have a trailer that you're going to be converting kind of into the traveling animal show. And tell me a little bit about how the traveling animal show is going to work and what your ultimate goals for displaying these really cool creatures are.
Right. Well, actually, the first opportunity, sort of like my pilot experiment with this, will be my department, myself, will be attending the Cod Wildlife Festival on Saturday, September 13th. I'll be over at Long Pasture on Bone Hill Road from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. and I'll have all of these animals out on display. The goal really is to give the public an opportunity to get up close to animals that they otherwise would never have an opportunity to see up close. A lot of people don't even realize that we have river otters in this town, and they don't know that we have mink in this town. And when people see coyote and red fox on the road, they have a tendency to look much larger because they're in movement and because they have all their fluff out than they actually are. And then another thing that people don't often realize is how light your raptors are. They look so huge when they're in the air with their wingspan, but when you actually pick them up, they're very, very light. So it'll give people an opportunity to sort of see these animals up close. And we'll also have, kind of frequently asked questions, situations that people may run into with these wildlife in their yards. What do they do if they find something that they think is injured? What do they do if they find something that they think is sick? What if they do if they come home after the winter and find a den in their yard? That sort of thing. So it's geared towards getting the public more friendly with the wildlife that's in their backyard.
Great. So Amy, can you tell me a little bit about each of these animals? Maybe we can take a look at them, especially the river otter and the mink, which are animals, as you say, many people don't even realize that we have here on the Cape.
Right, yeah. A lot of the time, if you see a river otter, it probably is going to be in a situation like this. They have a sort of whimsical nature about them, and I oftentimes during when the herring are running in the spring, will get phone calls from people that have reported them as everything from alligators to, big monsters in the stream. They're actually just chasing the fish. If you're lucky enough to see them alive, it's because they didn't notice you first. Once they see people, they really have no interest in interacting with them, and they usually take off before you even know that they were there. We do have mink in this town, along with other things like short-tailed weasel, and these are sort of, kind of fall into the same category as your rodents. Like, yes, we have rats, we have mice, we have all of those things all over the place all the time. You just don't see them very often. And this little guy was actually turned in to me. The guy who found it in his front yard, it had been hit by a car, thought that it was a fisher cat juvenile. And so we were going to have it stuffed as such until we discovered that it was in fact a mink. So yeah, it's just, it'll give, I think we have a fisher that's actually getting done right now, and we have an osprey that's getting done right now. So I think it'll give a really good opportunity for people to learn about some of the animals that you don't really see very often. And also, just kind of get people a little bit more familiar with the things that they do see all the time.
Exactly. So obviously this is something that you can't really actively search for animals to add to the collection, but it's
Right.
obviously something that you'll find along the natural course of your day. Is there, if someone is to encounter one that may have been hit by a car or hit themselves, is it just something that people know to give you a call, or is that something that you'll encounter along the course of your normal day at work?
Yeah, a lot of the times when people see a large animal that's been hit by a car, they call us before they call anybody else. So we are usually the first responders on a scene like that. And it's, usually in the case of my birds, they've ingested something that had rodenticide in it. They're sick in somebody's yard, kind of acting not properly. They're not flying. And so we're oftentimes the first responders to those situations too. So it sort of happens organically that we run into these animals just because of the nature of our job.
Sure. Can you show us a little bit about these birds?
Yeah, sure. So this right here is my red-tailed hawk. And this is actually a broad-winged hawk. And from just looking outside of the difference in size, when you look at them together, you don't really notice very many differences. But when you turn them around, it's much easier to tell that they're a completely different species. Your red-tailed hawk obviously has a red tail, and then your broad-winged hawk has these sort of nice stripes on its tail like this. They don't really get much bigger than this. I have seen red-tailed hawks that are, close to twice the size of this
Wow.
guy right here. I'm partial to the red-tailed hawk because it lived at our department, around our department, for about 5 years before it eventually ate something it shouldn't have and died in our parking lot here at MEA. So,
But now you have him forever.
but now I have him forever, yep, and he has, you know, new life through death.
Great. So where does the funding for this project come from?
From the natural resources budget. My boss, Doug Calwitt, was nice enough to believe in this program and thought that it would be great educational outreach because it's not cheap to have things stuffed. It's really not. It ran close to $2,000 to have these 4 mammals done, and about $600 to have the 2 birds done. So it's, you know, it's relatively expensive, but the idea is that we've been versed in how to properly take care of them. So hopefully they'll have nice long lives in our care here.
Indeed, and something that will be an educational piece for many, many years
Exactly,
to come.
yeah.
Great. Well, Amy, anything else about this really fascinating program? When are you hoping to start bringing these animals on the road? Well, as you said, the
yeah,
bone hill
definitely.
in Comaquid.
Yeah, Saturday, September 13th will be sort of like my pilot experiment with this. So if you have any interest whatsoever at checking out these animals up close, come visit me at the Cape Wildlife Expo. It's their 5th annual expo. It runs from 9 to 3 over at Long Pasture on Bone Hill Road. And that will be sort of the first start. If you're any teachers out there, librarians, people who, you know, run sort of public-oriented groups, want us to come and do a visit and a talk, we would be more than happy to do so. You can contact me either through the office here, 508-790-6272, or you can email me directly at amy.croteau@town.barnstable.ma.us.
Great. Well, Amy, thank you so much for introducing us to the animals, and
You're
we
welcome.
look forward to seeing them around town.
Definitely.
Thank you so much. Amy Croteau is, of course, a natural resource officer here in the town of Barnstable. For Barnstable This Morning, I'm Sarah Colvin.